S&P's turned green.
Yep, 12. Yeah. Russell turned green. It's up 10 cents.
There you go. Implied volatility overstatement and profit targets with strangles. Oh boy, this is heavy. Kids, get your helmet on. As premium sellers, one of the main ways we profit is through implied volatility overstatement, meaning that realized vol is lower than implied vol. We've done many studies in the past discussing the benefits of IV overstatement, finding that IV was overstated 75 to 80% of the time, depending on the time frame. In this study, we're going to dive into the effects of implied volatility on strangles, exploring quick profits, how quickly profits can be achieved, and when we receive the most. So it's going back to that 50% or 21 days, high versus low, all the above. Let's go next slide. 12 years of research. The reason we pick different time frames is just how much stuff we can basically just churn our way through in the last 24 hours. This stuff's all done like pretty much the day before. Mm-hmm. So we looked at the strangles of various deltas at 45 days, managed at 21 DT or 50% depending on the slide. We bucketed the trades based on various implied volatilities, over under 18. Where's the VIX right now?
VIX?
Is it over 18 or under?
VIX is trading at 1731, down 60 cents. /VX is.
So we were right at the cutoff this morning.
Yeah.
At 18.
Yep, or last night's close.
Yeah, last night's close. Right. We're just under it right now. Then we answered the following questions. What is the effect of implied volatility on strangles? How many days until we hit the most profit? What are the effects of managing at 21 days versus 50%? And how does implied volatility impact our profit targets? Want to guess?
There's a lot of questions in here.
Okay, let me ask you one by one. How does implied volatility impact profit targets? I'll give you a hint.
By a percentage basis?
Higher is better.
Yeah, of course. I would have thought that. I just don't know what percentage.
How many days until we hit the most profit?
21. Three weeks. Within 3 weeks.
3 weeks, Tony says. What are the effects of managing at 21 DT versus 50%?
What are the effects on the P&L, I'm going to assume?
Yes.
I think it's actually going to be better, higher.
Higher at?
21 days than 50%.
Okay. And
I have no idea. I could be completely wrong on this. I'm not positive about anything.
And what is the effect of implied volatility on strangles? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, that is going to be higher credits.
Sure. Entry is the only thing you can control.
It's the only thing that we know for sure.
Yep.
Okay, let's see what we got. So we start off with the theoretical pop for selling options is calculated by taking 1 minus the delta of the option. So if you have strangles, it's then 1 minus 2 times the delta because you're selling 2 options, right? Mm-hmm. So if you sell a 20 delta strangle, the theoretical pop is 60%. That's 1 minus 2 times 20. 1 minus 40 is 60, right?
Yeah, people get a little confused thinking it's closer to 80% when they do that because they're doing a 20 delta option.
Well, the theoretical pop might be 60, but the actual pop might be closer to 80.
Sure.
Let's go next slide. The actual win rate was much higher than the theoretical pop due to the initial credit. Because also when you collect initial credit, you have to subtract the credit from the numbers. Sure. It's going to be a lot higher. In high implied volatility, the win rate was nearly identical to all occurrences, but the return on capital was more than double.
Right. It's almost like probability of touch being almost twice as much as the delta. Like, you look at a 20 delta option, you say, what's the, this is so far out of the money. I got an 80% pop here. There's nothing is ever going to happen, but you got basically a 40% chance of a touch.
So if you look at all occurrences and you look at the 20 delta options, the actual win rate was 76. The theoretical is 60. So it's 16% higher, which is big. But if you look at a high implied volatility, which is over 18, it was 78. And that's the world we live in. So that 78 is a big number.
Well, the win rate changes. That's why they highlight it there. The win rate changes even greater by these. The average return on capital is better too.
Yes.
And the win rate's good. I mean, I meant the average return on capital is much better too when it's higher IV. That's what I'm trying to say.
In higher IV, you're 30% above the theoretical pop, and your average return on capital is 4.2%.
Because I look at that win rate with high IV, 76 to 78. I mean, that's. I know statistically that's nice, but that's like splitting pennies for me. But doubling the average return on capital, now you're talking money. Now you're talking to me. Now you're talking to me, baby.
Higher implied volatility, make more money. Let's go to the next slide. So in high implied volatility, not only is more credit collected, but the P&L tends to be higher as a percentage of that credit. So when the IV is high, there are less dramatic swings in P&L from the trade to trade, even with further out of the money strangles. So we'll stay at that 20 delta. P&L as a percent of the credit, if it's in high IV, 23%, and P&L volatility drops to 71. And you can see how dramatic that is against all occurrences. You collect more money and you have smaller volatility swings. That's the cool thing.
Yes, sir.
And it stays that way throughout the entire process. Lower P&L volatility, higher P&L as a percent of the credit. Okay, so here we look at the average number of days until hitting the most profit. You said 21. The actual turned out to be 17.
I was going to say
Roughly,
inside 21 is what I said, but yeah, I get it.
Roughly 2.5 weeks after trade entry. Approximately 28% of the occurrences saw the highest profits come between the first and second week after trade entry.
I was really just piggybacking old research that we've done here. We said that if trades are going to work, they typically work with inside 3 weeks, which is really staying true here too, which is great. So a lot of times when people want to avoid earnings and they're looking to put on a trade with a stock that has earnings, if they send me an email and they go, is this a decent trade? I'll say, you know what? Earnings aren't for 4 or 5 weeks. If the trade's going to work, it's going to work within 3 weeks. Sure, go ahead, put it on. I don't think you're going to get too affected as volatility does increase for earnings about 2 weeks before the earnings. So yeah, that fudges it. That meets the criteria. I like it.
Well, this is a really good statistic because 68% of the days with the most profit occurred before managing at 21 days.
Mm-hmm. You think I'm not listening over here? I know you call me silly a couple of times and stuff like that, but you know we're idiotic and stuff like that. But I got 2 ears and I can't close them, although I'd like to sometimes. Like my eyes, I can close those, and I do that often while we're on the show. I can't.
Let's go to the next slide, Beth.
I don't close my ears, so I do pay attention.
16 Delta Strangles, hitting the days hitting the most profit, 50% profit for 20 days. This is interesting too. Managing at 50% profit led to faster profits than managing at 21 days. Now, I manage at 21 days. You know, I mean, I manage all the time, but 21 days is kind of my wheelhouse. Led to faster profits than managing at 21 days by roughly 3 days. However, on average, the P&L was 20% smaller when managed at 50%. So basically, the 21 DT versus the 50% is pretty. They're pretty much the same thing. You make more money if you manage at 21 days. You get to manage faster if you manage at 50%, according to the research. I think it's 6 of one, 6 of one, half dozen of another. It doesn't.
Even though I got it right, I would say you are correct that it's 6 of one, half dozen of another. Because you know what? If you make that 50% so quickly, you're probably going to look to take it off and not let it run to have a higher gain. And then a lot of times when you reach 50%, it might come back the other direction too. So I think for P&L volatility of your portfolio, just the curve of how it behaves, I think taking the profits is prudent.
So this one is the P&L, the median P&L rose with increasing implied volatility to the volatility's mean reverting nature. So this one is really interesting because this is the 50% profit target. So days to reach 50% profit target didn't decrease with higher implied volatility because of the increased initial credit. Only in the 50 to 75 range, which doesn't really happen that often. So when you look at this, the IVR range for 16 Delta Strangles, we're usually in that 25 to 50, that second tier. The 50 to 75 is kind of rare. And the days you're in this trade are about 17. And the median P&L is about 76, and the initial credit about 182. That makes a lot of sense. That's kind of where we mostly live in that range. Let's go to the last slide. So pretty expected takeaways in high implied volatility, increasing strangle delta maintains win rates and doubles the return on capital, with the 20 to 30 delta strangles providing the best return on capital and a reduction in P&L volatility. Another thing to look at is the days in a trade rather than days to expiration. For 16 delta strangles exiting at 17 days, post-entry maximizes profits, while early management can hurt long-term P&L, but managing at 50% profit speeds up the profits compared to 21 DT, but results in lower average P&L, as increased volatility doesn't necessarily quicken gains due to the initial credit adjustments. I find it way easier after you make all the adjustments just to manage the 21 days.